Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel for another video on Gran Turismo 7, and I am back with highlights from possibly one of the most special races we've had so far on Gran Turismo 7. It was the GT World Series Round 1 in the Manufacturers Championship, and I am driving for McLaren. So we're at Suzuka, we have possible rain in this race. It's a scripted weather pattern, but this was my first attempt at the race. Qualified in P3. Annoyingly, it should have been a pole position lap, but I made a mistake in the final sector, lost me about 3 tenths. I think we would have easily been in the 159 without that mistake. But P3 in a long race like this is pretty good. So we're running 35 laps, as you can see there. That is because we're in GT1 class. So if you're in GT1, you run 35 laps, I think half distance for GT2. And I think GT3 had similar, but maybe slightly different settings or something like that. So the way this season is GT2 and 3 run slightly shorter races, and some of the groups also run actual Group 4 races when we run Group 3 races. So there is going to be a difference in cars for some people as well. So it is going to be slightly different throughout the season. So when you see different content for different people, that is the reason why. But yeah, starting from P3, and I am taking this race so cautiously. Now, I think I had a lot more pace in this first race than what I gave here, because I think with a long race like this, you just don't want to crash. It's 35 laps, and I knew that Suzuka in Group 3 is a tricky combination at the best of times. Add in rain, and it can get pretty scary. So keeping it on the track and keeping it safe was a very big priority for me during this race. You can see on this opening lap, not really pushing too much. We're just trying to get in that slipstream and just stay with the 2 cars ahead of us at the moment. Now, another big change for this season, which I think actually worked out really well for our race that we did. We only did 1 race though, so we're judging this off the one that we did, was the fact that there was full damage on them. So basically heavy damage for any collisions, any contact with walls, any contact with other cars meant you were going to get some severe damage on your car, and that damage would mean you'd have to pit. It is a little bit too strong, I think, the damage, because for example a tiny bit of damage on your front would require a pit stop in general. However, on other games like iRacing and ACC, a similar type of damage would probably lose you 1/10 to 2 tenths a lap, something like that. So yeah, on this game you're losing seconds, and in my opinion that's a little bit too drastic. Maybe they could cut down minor damage when you pick up small amounts of damage to the car, just to reduce the actual lap time loss when you're doing heavy damage. But overall, I think it's been positive for round 1. We've still got 4 more rounds to go, so we'll lay judgment a little bit further on into the season. But you can see we're skipping ahead to lap 4 now, and we're still with the group in front of us. We've got a reasonable gap to behind us. Sorry for no doubters at the early start of this early part of this race. It's because I had to record the first third or less than that on the replay footage. After that, it is the full proper deltas and everything. So in about, not too many laps time, you'll start seeing all the deltas reappear on the screen. But you can see at the moment we've got a gap. You can see in the mirror the car behind. He's a reasonable distance behind us. We're getting closer to P2. P2 running very close to the edge of the track there, nearly making a mistake. That corner was going to cause people a lot of problems during this race. I'm sure a lot of people ran wide there, especially when the rain hit, and probably made mistakes. But at the moment, this race is going pretty well. We're not pushing too much. You can see the lap times, low 201s. I do think if we could have got into a rhythm in no dirty air, we could have started doing probably 2-minute lap times pretty comfortably. But the problem was, first race of the day, I did not want to risk crashing. So when you're playing at 90%, you're not really going to be pushing them limits. You can see I'm giving the curbs quite a wide berth, just trying to make sure that we don't make any big mistakes and just keep it nice and safe. So we skip ahead now to the end of lap 5, and you can see getting very close to P2. Makes a little bit of a mistake on the exit there, and we're going to get that slipstream behind him now going into turn 1. However, the Nissan GTR incredibly quick off that corner. You can see the acceleration difference. The McLaren, that is one of the weaknesses of the McLaren, and I think it's going to be weak at certain tracks during this season compared to other tracks, but there should be opportunities for the McLaren to do well. However, going up the inside here, you can see that he obviously saw us going down the inside because he made the mistake and decided to back out and give the space, and I think that is because of heavy damage. He obviously was wary of it. We wasn't going to go for the move, to be honest, but once I saw him then move out of the way, I thought, right, we're going to go for that, and we're going to take that position, and we pull off a nice move there to get ourselves up into P2. So going pretty well. We've got Atomics there in P1. The reason his name is not showing is because I think he got his name removed by PD as nickname that he uses. So yeah, that was a bit unfortunate for him. But yeah, skipping to lap 9 now, and we can see on the Delta there, lap times have been really consistent, just not particularly fast, just driving fairly safe, keeping it nice and smooth, not taking any risks. Now we've got the deltas back, you can see also the weather. Now, you can see on that weather radar, what PD have done for this race is, it was kind of a scripted weather pattern, and what they've actually done is they slowed the rate of weather down massively. And this needs to be a thing for all dynamic weather races, in my opinion. This worked so much better because you can see it moving incredibly slowly. That weather pattern has been moving in for quite a few laps now. And what that enables us to do is zoom right in, and you can see that where we are on the track, that is where it's going to hit first on the track. So we are going to get a bit of weather on just one corner to start with. And as you can see here, as we skip to lap 10, this is something that absolutely puts Gran Turismo in a league of its own, I think, with the weather system. You can see the weather's moving in slowly. It's starting to hit the edge of the corner we're coming up to now. So if you have a little look on the telemetry of the water bar, it's starting to go up a bit. We're still in dry conditions though, just about there. It's getting slippery though, and we're going to start having to play it a little bit safe. So yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. I wish that all dynamic weather races had an option, even in lobbies, to slow the weather pattern down. And maybe in daily races slow it down a little bit as well if we ever have dynamic weather, just so that we can see where and when, you know, when to pit properly. But you can see now we're on lap 11, and you can see that the top part of Spoon is completely covered now with very light rain. So that means it's going to be a little bit trickier now as we go into the braking zone. So you're going to see I'm going to take this a little bit more cautious. We can see Antomic's there in P1, 3.5 seconds ahead. He's going to take this cautious. You're going to see we're going to catch him up by 3-4 tenths through here. So I take it quite cautious here. Down to second gear, you can see it's understeering a little bit there, running up to the curb, and at the end of the corner you can see it's a little bit more wet. It's actually going over the bar for the dry tyres, so getting a little bit treacherous there on lap 11, and you can see that Antomic's there down to 3.2, so we gained 3-4 tenths on him on that lap. That's probably because the McLaren is a little bit better in intermediate conditions, and probably when the dry tyres run, it's probably a little bit stronger in this type of conditions now. So we've got a nice gap to P3 though. You can see we've got that gap up to nearly 2 seconds, so at the moment the race is going quite well. We've got a yellow flag out there for someone, not too sure what's happened there, but we got another yellow flag there. I think, unless that was for it couldn't have been for Antomix, that must have been for the car ahead, because I think the car ahead of him went wide, and Antomix has also gone wide into turn 1, that corner that can easily catch you out. And now we are right behind the leader of this race, and we're coming up to about a third of the way through the race, and this is really starting to spice up a little bit now. We're right behind him, we've got that Supra right in front of us, and we've also got about 1.9 seconds to P3, so everything's looking pretty good at this stage, and we're doing okay. We're playing it safe, we're not taking any risks, tyres looking really good, everything's looking perfect. We don't really need to worry about tyres in this race because we knew we had to put intermediates on at some stage, so there was no concern with tyre wear. You could just go as aggressive as you like. But into this braking zone, you can see I'm starting to use traction control because I wasn't sure if the weather would start hitting into this hairpin, but I didn't really need to use it there. You can see a bit of a mistake. I just got it on in precaution just in case. And now coming up to this corner, you're going to see that it's definitely starting to get a lot more treacherous. So up to 2 traction control, and you can see I lift off very early. This is something you need to do in wet conditions. Lift off early and then ensure that you do not put 100% braking in like I've done there. Keep it nice and smooth, 50% braking, and be very, very cautious. You can see the TC really helping me out there. And now this is quite treacherous. You can see this is full intermediate conditions on that exit, and now back onto the straight, we're back into dry conditions, and this is amazing. This is what makes these races so special. I absolutely love this race. The fact that you had one corner where the rain's coming in more and the rest of the track dry just made it feel absolutely brilliant. It's coming in nice and slow, the weather's hitting on one part of the track, and then it's going to gradually take over the whole track. So into the final chicane now, Antomix is going to go for an early pit stop, and probably a very good decision that I decided to risk it. I saw him go in the pits and thought, I'm going to risk it and go for one more lap. You never know, and we're going to try and, you know, take it ultra careful on that on the Spoon corner. So as we approach up to the corner now, you can see the weather is definitely getting wet. You can see coming into the hairpin now, we've actually got water on the track now. So this has made me a little bit worried. And I think at this point I realised I've made a mistake because it's nearly on intermediate conditions on that corner. So knowing that it's like that there means that this corner, Spoon corner that we're coming up to now, is going to be absolutely treacherous. So you can see traction control on level 3. And you can see I'm going to start lifting already. I'm going to take this ultra safe because I know that I've made a mistake. And the best thing to do when you know you've made a mistake is play it safe. don't take any risks. You can see almost driving it that slow, we go off the track. Everyone goes off behind us. Everyone makes a mistake. They're going to lose massive amount of time. You can see him on the replay camera there. Huge loss of time. We've lost time here, but the main thing is we've kept it on the track and we haven't got dirty tyres. That was possibly one of the most important moments of the race there, not to lose control of the car and crash off. So big loss of time. You can see on the Delta as you go through the split, 10 seconds lost there. So massive loss of time. Probably lost us about 6 or 7 seconds by that mistake there. And unfortunately, we should have pitted lap 12, but this was our first attempt. We were in the unknown. We weren't 100% sure with when to pit, when not to pit and stuff like that. So at least we learnt that lesson there. And if all else fails, we can go again for another race. There's 3 slots to race, but at the moment, we're in a good position. This is a 370-point race, so there's some good points up for grabs here. And we're going to come out the pits in P3. You can see the 2 drivers that pitted early have had a massive undercut there. Huge undercut. You can see, I think we actually got undercut by about 5 or 6 seconds by the car that's in front of us. So a little bit of loss of time for us. However, we are still in this race. This is a long race, and this is one thing I do like about the longer races. The gap is 5 seconds, but anything can happen in this race. And you don't really lose heart too much. You kind of realise that, you know, you keep it on the track, you play this safe. And we now know that we're going into the section of the race that's going to be very, very good for the McLaren. As you can see, we're starting to catch up to P1 and P2. And Atomics had actually picked up damage during the wet phase. He hit that group of cars that went off behind me. He hit one of them cars and picked up front end damage. So his car was probably driving very, very awkward right now with intermediate tyres and damage. And you can see it's just not enjoying these conditions. So this should be a fairly easy pass on the Supra. It's going to be losing pace on the straights with the damage. And this is what I'm saying. I think for light damage, maybe they need to make it a little less impactful on the car's performance. Full damage, fair enough. Let it, you know, pit stop required. But you can see an easy position gain there up the inside from the McLaren. And now we're catching up to P1. You can see I've got TC on level 2 because this is a part of the race where you can see the telemetry. It's technically full wets, but one bit of advice on this game is in Group 3, full wets, even in Group 4, full wets don't really do the job. Intermediates do everything that you need to do really, and the fact that we know it dries out very quick on this game, intermediates are always going to be probably the preferred choice of tyre. And you can see at the moment we're managing it quite well, traction control on 2, being very cautious on the throttle. We're probably losing so much time compared to what we know we could do in terms of pace, but keeping it on the track is more important. If you make one mistake in this race where you hit the wall and damage, that could be your race over because you're going to have to pit again, you're going to have to get damage repaired, and you're probably going to drop all the way down to like 30-40 seconds behind. So important just to keep it on the track and play it ultra safe. So again, skipping a little bit further on now, and you can see we're starting to catch a little bit more up to P1 there. You can watch how the cars are starting to move about a lot. You can see P1 obviously struggling for traction in that Lexus. The Lexus, he's actually done a brilliant job with that Lexus to keep that car on the track, because I can imagine that car being quite sketchy in these wet conditions. But you can see behind us we've managed to pull that gap out to 3 seconds to Atomics. A bit unfortunate for him with the damage that he picked up, but that's the thing with heavy damage races. You've got to be very, very careful. So now he's gaining a little bit in certain parts of the track, Atomics, because I think P1's struggling massively through this section. And you can see how wet it's really getting on this part. You can see trying to put the power down. This part of the track was lethal. One bit of throttle too much and you could be easily spinning, and that's why we're using 2TC during this phase of the race. Just playing it safe, making sure we don't make any mistakes. And again, into this right hand corner, you can see the car in front moving around all over the place. And at the moment, it's looking pretty good for us in the McLaren. We're getting very close. We're keeping it on the track. And at the moment, I felt pretty comfortable. I felt like we're in a good position here. You can see right up behind on the exit, trying to get that power down. And now along this corner, you can see the short shifting that we're going to do. Going into 4th gear nice and early. Just doling that power a little bit, just so that it doesn't rev up. And just keeping the momentum out of the corner. And then again, we're going to have to brake very early, because we can't really go for a move from in these conditions. It would be so risky to send one up the inside. So playing it ultra safe. And this is one thing I do love about these full damage races. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful in your process of racing. You can't just go for a send. You've got to make sure that that move is on, and you've also got to try and just keep it safe at all times. You're more wary about the track, the curbs, everything. Your senses are on edge basically. You need to keep every single corner within them limits, because one mistake like that there, nearly onto the curb, we could be spinning around. So again, you can see how I lifted off, backed out, played it safe, and we're still in this race. So again, coming out of the final chicane, can we get nice and close to him here? You can see getting onto that throttle, this corner was very difficult to put the power down, as you can see from P1 there, trying to get that power down. He's moving around. TC really helping me out here. And now we're going to get the run with the slipstream, and we're going to go for a kind of a fake move. So what I do here is I go to the right hand side of the track just to make him think that I'm going to possibly send it up the inside, but I brake early, he brakes late, he misses his braking, and he's off the track on that really frustrating corner where it's easily to do, and that puts me up into P1 in this race. So a really nice move there where we took our time. We just kind of made him think we were going to go for the move when we wasn't even thinking about it, to be honest. We braked nice and early, and he fell for that one, and that puts us up into the lead. And now we've just got to try and keep it smooth now until the track starts to dry out, because the track will start drying out soon. You can see the rain is fading a little bit. You can see on the telemetry it's starting to drop off a bit. You can see it's very wet in some places still, so some parts of the track are going to dry quicker than other parts of the track, so you're going to have a situation where you can push a bit more aggressive in some parts, and you have to be a bit more careful in other parts. So skipping ahead now to lap 20, you can actually see on the track now how it is starting to dry out compared to a few laps previous. Still very wet through there on the puddle, but then as you get through to this section, you see at the top of the hill, it's definitely starting to dry out, and you can see the intermediate tyres are starting to work a little bit better at this phase of the race. Now we're still being very, very careful on the throttle, and like I say, we probably could have gone quite, at least a second or two quicker a lap time than what we're doing now, but that would have opened up the risk of crashing and binning it and having to pit for damage. So again, we're in the lead. All we have to really do is keep a good safe line, get good exit speeds, and not let him go for an opportunity to overtake us. So this was a plan. Keep it safe, drive it within our means, don't overdo it in any of the corners, and wait for this track to dry out before we pit for them hard tyres, because we are going to have to go onto the hard tyres when the edge of the track is still a little bit wet, because if you go too late, you're going to lose too much to someone that pits fairly early. So you can see through here, the track is actually starting to look very, very dry on lap 20, because this is a part of the track where the rain hit first, and you can actually see you could probably get away with hard tyres at some parts of the track. However, running wide, you'd easily be causing chaos, because your car would be sliding everywhere. But lap 23 now, this was the phase where technically you could possibly go for them dry tyres. You can see that there is a dry line. The edge of the track is still very, very wet. You're going to have to be very precise if you go for them dry tyres, but it'd be a huge risk to pit this early, I think, for dry tyres. So I decided 23 is too early. I'm not taking that risk. I'm going to stay on this intermediate tyre. It's still working okay. We still have the lead, so we don't want to do anything too silly. We don't want to pit lap 23 and then spin and crash and our race is over. So skipping to lap 25, and again now you can see the track is definitely drying out more. There's some parts of the track that are completely dry. The curbs are still wet, and I decided this is the time. We're going to go into the pits, get into there, and get these hard tyres on. Now, as we come out of the pits, we're going to fast forward that pit stop with the hard tyres going on. I knew that we'd have to put traction control on, but I wasn't aware of how bad it'd be. You can see flooring it even with 5 TC on somehow stopped it from going over the white line. It started to go that way. It was very close, but managed to stop it. And I think I realised quick enough, got off the throttle, and just about saved that moment. So that could have been pretty much race over if we'd have spun there with a penalty and damage as well. That would have been the end of it. But we've come out of the pits, and now we're going to have to take this very cautious, because you can see I'm trying to figure out how aggressive I can be, and this is the only problem with being into the pits before the driver that did before. He can drive it aggressive, he can push them inters, and I can also see on the delta he's pulling away from me. 24.3, 24.4, he's gaining on me, and I could see that while I was on my outlap, and I knew that I needed to push more, but at the same time I felt if I overdo it and spin it, it's going to be race over. So I was aware that I needed to keep it on the track and just take it cautious, and I could see that I was being way too cautious on these laps. But again, it's that thought process of just knowing that this is a long race and you don't want to bin it on one silly mistake of overdriving it at this phase of the race. So yeah, again, keeping it nice and smooth. Again, this part of the track, this was where you could start pushing it a little bit more. You could see the track was quite dry through here, so again, maximum attack through here pretty much into the braking zone. Braking just before the tarmac on the right hand side. You can see I can actually push quite aggressively through here, but just being very, very careful that you don't run onto any of the curbs. So you can see I'm just trying to literally keep the car in the middle of the track, on the dry spot without making any mistakes. At that point there, we did gain a little bit back on P1, but I think with the pit exit mistake that we made where we lost the rear, we lost about 2 seconds with that because the wheels spun up, had to lift off the throttle, we lost all the momentum, and then it was spinning with this 5TC and bogging down. So we lost quite a bit on the pit exit, and I was aware of that, so I knew that we were going to come out behind him. And the fact that this lap is probably, you can see we were 23.3 I think when we came out, so we've lost over a second on the lap as well, so I knew that he'd probably be 2 to 3 seconds at least ahead of me on the exit now. So as we come down the straight, I knew that that was a mistake. I should have pitted 1 lap later probably and played it super safe, and you can see there that he has come out the pits considerably ahead of us. By the time we get through turn 1, it's going to be about 3 seconds I think, so 3.1, 3.2. And then as we're trying to get a bit more aggressive, and this is a risk, I thought I'm going to have to start pushing. We pushed a little bit too much and nearly lost it on the wet spot of the track there. So again, showing you the risks of overdriving it there, and instantly 1 second lost because of that one little mistake. And that shows you, if you overdrive it in these conditions, one little error could be massively costly. So again, we're going to have to regroup and just try and find these dry parts and try and push on. You can see the gap is at 4 seconds dead, and now the track is going to start drying out. Obviously the sun's out, so it is going to start drying out the edge of the track, but there is still the danger of crashing and getting onto the curbs and you're just making that mistake that's going to be really, really costly. So as we come through here, we're going to skip a little bit further on now to lap 31, and you can see the gap has stayed pretty much identical. We have gained 4 tenths on the leader, which shows us the pace is there. We gained like half a second, and we're not overdriving this. We're driving this super safe at the moment. We haven't really been pushing it because still the edge of the track, because it's gone into the evening setting, there is still wet spots on the track. So again, we're still being quite cautious with how we're driving, because one little overdrive on a corner on an exit curb could literally mean we're in the barrier. And as we come through here on lap 32, we can see, as we come through this exit here now, you're going to see the leader has made a mistake. He's gone onto the curb on the left, lost the rear, he's onto the grass, he's just managed to avoid contact with the barrier, and he rejoins right on the racing line there. I had a moment there where it was either go straight through him or we crash, because if we go off the racing line with dry tyres, we're going to spin and go straight off. And we decided to take the risk, go through his ghost car. It was a little bit of a dodgy rejoin. Maybe he should have just been a bit more careful with the speed that he was going, because he was going much slower. Been a bit more careful with that rejoin, but we managed to take that position and up into P1. So now we've just got to hold on to this to the end of the race. You can see that sun is starting to set now in the distance. There is still wet spots on the edge of the track. You can see as I go on the curbs, it is still wet. You can see it on the telemetry. So it is very, very dangerous still on the edge of the track, but we are starting to push a little bit more. You can see lap times kind of safely doing 202s. We're not pushing at the moment. We're keeping it away from the curbs, really. We're not being that aggressive, but you can see we started to get down to 201s there on lap 33, and now we're starting to push a bit more because he's right up behind us. He's pushing us on this final lap. We're going to have to just try and keep this nice and safe and make no mistakes here. So over the line, we're going to have to really be on edge here now and make no mistakes at all. You can see going to the right hand side of the track, trying to avoid him getting the slipstream too much, then back over to the left, and he's going to be a bit too far behind to go for a move into turn 1. So all we have to do is basically hold the line, defensive lines, get good exits, and he's going to find it very, very hard to overtake. The track is starting to dry out mainly everywhere now. We can start using the curbs, and you can see here we can be a bit more aggressive on that curb. There's a little bit of water still on it, but it's nowhere near as bad. Again, onto the curb there, getting away with that. And again, this is, I really want more races like this, because the time of day, the visuals on the game, it looks absolutely amazing. It's a shame that PD do not utilize what they've created in Gran Turismo with the visuals, the dynamic weather system. The fact that they can slow that dynamic weather system down as well makes me wonder why they're not doing that more in daily races as well as the GT World Series races. You know, if it's slow like that, we can see when the weather's coming and we can predict more when we need to change tyres. It was a great move that they've done that for this race. I think that needs to be implemented into the game for all dynamic weather situations, because it will make the races so much better. You can see again, look at the visuals on this game as we're coming up with the sun setting in the distance. It looks absolutely amazing, and we're managing to hold him off at the moment. 3 tenths ahead into the spoon corner. We need to just make sure we get a good exit off this corner just so he can't go for a move into 130R. You can see he goes a little bit wide there. That's going to open the gap up to 4 tenths. Trying to keep a narrow line onto the power. It's up to 6 tenths there. We've done that corner a little bit better, and now we've just got to hold it all the way to the finishing line to take a win in our first attempt at this race in this split 2 race. It was split 2, not split 1, so 370 points available, and we were definitely going to take that if we managed to take this win. So into the final braking zone, braking just before that 100 board, into the chicane, and then as we're coming through here, we have a yellow flag because I think a driver has actually crashed on the pit entry there. I don't know what's going on there, but he's crashed into the pit lane entry, and we're going to take the win in one of the best races I think we've had on Gran Turismo. It has to be one of the most exciting we've had with the weather changes, the fact that the rain hit at one part of the track. And yeah, 2 positions gained, a clean race. We made mistakes on strategy, but we got it back with just keeping the car on the track. And we managed to get 370 points from that race. And that means we are in the top 10 in Europe for the Manufacturers' Championship. And we are leading McLaren. We are actually P1. It won't last because Matt in P2 is probably going to overtake us. He was in top split. He had a harder race than me. So, you know, being realistic, we got a little bit lucky being in split 2. But yeah, what a race. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Hopefully you'll come back to watch us in more live rounds in the GT World Series and catch the replay videos as well. Thanks again for watching, everyone.